going to go from one fantastic guest to another. Dan Kovalik. How you doing, Dan? You doing okay
Hey,
this
I'm
morning?
okay. Good morning. How you doing? I'm okay.
I am doing well. I am better that you are with me. Dan Kovalik, he's an American human rights, labor rights lawyer and political activist. Previously taught at the International Human Rights at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. Dan, congratulations. Congratulations on order. I was crowing about you this morning when I opened my
Really?
show.
That's
I
really
was.
nice of you. Thank
I
you.
am
Thank you.
always when my guests do stuff, I'm always appreciative is not the word for it. I'm always proud of my guests when they're doing stuff. Um, I have another guest that is doing something pretty big. He's in Africa right now. He told me not to say anything about it, so I'm not. I want to wait till he exposes it. But I thought this was fantastic from on yours. I'm just going to read it. A tweet. Gustavo Petro, president of Colombia. Indeed, Bernie Moreno's threat has come true. My children, my family, and I have been added to the OFAC list. My lawyer in defense will be Dan Kovalik from the USA. The same Dan that I'm speaking to right now. Fighting drug trafficking for decades and effectively has brought me to this measure from the government of the society we helped so much to curb their cocaine consumption. A complete paradox, but not a step back and never on our knees. That was the president of Colombia. Congratulations, Dan. So how did this come about? What is going on with this? For one, what is the OFAC list? Let's go to basics first.
Yeah, the OFAC list it's the Office of Foreign Asset Control list. And what it is, it's a blacklist. If you're on the list, it means that you cannot hold monies in US banks. You cannot do business with US people or companies. And it really has a cascading effect. I mean, it even affects, any institution that itself has connection with U.S. banks or companies is impacted too. So, for example,
Mhm.
all of the assets that Petro and his wife have in Colombia have been frozen.
Really?
Yes, so they
Because
can't
they're
even get.
connected to U.S. banks.
Yeah, and so they can't get money out for daily needs to pay for their kids' education. Um, yeah, so basically, it destroys your economic life, and of course, the people around you can't deal with you because if they deal with you, they could be sanctioned too, right? So, I mean, it really is a means to, first of all, really isolate the people on the list, but it can also, what often happens is the entire country ends up sanctioned. When your head of state is on the list, again, it can have this cascading effect where, you know, the country itself or major industries in the country are sanctioned. So it's a very serious matter. It's obviously politically motivated. This follows um, Petro's appearance at the United Nations a couple weeks ago, in which he really denounced the genocide in Gaza, talked
Yes, he
about the
did.
need to send in a military force to stop the genocide. He ended up on the street protesting and speaking out against the U.S. threats against Venezuela, telling U.S. military to disobey, unjust orders. And immediately Trump was upset about this. He took away Petro's visa at that point. And Petro left the country. Petro also recently announced that Colombia was leaving the partnership with NATO, which was strange. It was even, had anything to do with NATO, which is the North Atlantic Treaty
Yes.
Organization. It's not the
Yes.
North Atlantic.
Yes.
Um, so all these things combined clearly led to this. As Petro mentions in his that statement you read, I mean, he's been fighting drug cartels his entire political career, and now they put him on the OFAC list, alleging that he himself is involved in the drug trade, which is just ridiculous. So that's where we're at.
So he contacted you and said, "Hey, can you be my lawyer?" So did you know Petro before?
I've known Petro for about 20 years. I knew him when he
Have you?
was, yeah, I knew him when he was a senator. I knew him when he was a mayor. And our paths have crossed a number of times. When he was a senator, he was very important in exposing what was known then as the para-political scandal, the scandal in which a number of government people, Congress people, the president, others, were exposed as having relationships with the paramilitary death squads. And he was very instrumental as a senator in exposing that, denouncing it. At the same time, I was doing similar work. I was also writing and um, was an activist against the paramilitary military ties, because the U.S. was giving at that point
Death squads.
billions of dollars to the Colombian military that was working with the death squads, right? And I had a big case at that time, a couple big cases against companies like Coca-Cola that we were alleging were themselves working with the paramilitary death squad. So our work was, you know, overlapping, and I, at some point, um, invited him to the U.S., was able to do that through my union, the Steelworkers, to speak to Senate, um, to the Senate, about what was happening in Colombia.
Mhm.
And that's how I met him. So I've known him for about 20 years, and we've been talking for a while about possible litigation in the U.S. And I talked with him a couple days before he made that announcement, before we even knew that he was going to be on the OFAC list.
Mhm.
So the actual announcement came as a little bit of a surprise to me, but not totally, because again, I had been in communication with him for years, on and off.
So how does a person contest Trump putting him on this list? Like, is this? It doesn't feel like this would be a normal court, or is it a normal court
Well,
where
you
this
can.
takes
There are
place?
two means to do it. You could go directly into court alleging due process violations, other constitutional violations, First Amendment violations. In this case, that we think he was put on the list because of statements he made, again, at the United Nations of all places.
But does that count as a First Amendment since he's an American citizen?
Well, the First Amendment doesn't just apply to American citizens. I mean, if you look at if at the Bill of Rights, some of the rights are limited to citizens, but not all are, and the First Amendment is not. And
Interesting.
he was in the U.S. at the time he made that statement, so he has some First Amendment protections. That's why, for example, um, and some judges have ruled in favor of these immigrants that have been, threatened with deportation based on their pro-Palestinian statements or activism. Even though they're immigrants, they have First Amendment rights. So that might be a very good, you know,
Way of
opportunity
contesting
for
it.
us. Yeah.
What other ways, if the First Amendment grounds aren't, let's say, honored by the court, what are other ways to try to contest this? I mean, you mentioned due process, effectively saying this is arbitrary, that the president put this on for reasons other than legitimate real world phenomena reasons. Like, I guess for
And
that, you
yeah,
would have
and
to,
without any due process, without giving it, without warning him that this may happen, giving him a chance to defend himself, all the things we think of as showing him the evidence that he's basing it on, again, allowing him to respond to that, to cross-examine witnesses. That's all part of due process. None of that was done, and it's
This
never
sounds
done, you know.
well. This sounds dumb, but does a president need to warn? Does a president need to follow some kind of due process to put people on
Well,
various
the
lists?
answer is with this OFAC list, no, the president hasn't done that, generally speaking, but the argument is he should.
I see.
When you destroy someone's economic life, you take everything they have, presumably they're entitled to some due process before you do that, right?
Yeah.
So, so you could go to court and make those arguments. The other way is to do it through an administrative challenge through the Treasury Department itself, which is a very long and Byzantine process. I mean, neither way is easy for sure. Because the president, as you say, has been given a lot of latitude to do this. But again, has he been properly given it? I mean, does he really have the right to do these things? So there have been
And
some successful challenges to it, but not many, you know.
well, it seems like I had this conversation with Garland yesterday about if a police officer, if an ICE agent tried to take you off the streets, and they said, "Well, this guy is not an American citizen, and so we're going to snatch him and throw him into the back of some kind of, paddy wagon." And if the person says, "Well, look, I'm an American citizen," and just so happened, the person had a birth certificate, had a picture of when he was born, had a picture of conception, maybe, like I'm just saying, like, let's say he had all the evidence necessary. Picture of conceptions would be kind of wild, but whatever. Just all the evidence necessary to indicate that I am an American citizen. Full stop. It is a flat fact, and I can prove it right here on the spot. And Garland was like, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. The officer would not protect your rights, and they most likely would not get involved. And I guess my thing is that something similar here? Like, you can go through the Treasury Department, but the Treasury Department is effectively part of the executive branch. If you go through the courts, even if you can prove as a flat fact that what the president is saying is lying, like, this is nonsense. He has worked against the drug cartels. We can prove it as a flat fact. We can prove it that he does not deserve to be on this list. Will the courts get involved?
Well, they might. The answer is, if you get the right judge, yes. I mean, you could have some success, but it's very difficult
Yeah.
for the reasons you say, but it's certainly a fight worth making, I think.
No, agreed.
Not just for Petro, but again, for the, rule of law in general. And in the case you give, yeah, it's true that the ICE agent can and does in many instances take people off the streets and detain them. But ultimately, due process does protect those people in the end. If they truly are a citizen, you know, they should be able to show that and go to a court and show it and be ordered freed.
Hmm.
Right? There are due process protections. Now they seem to be weakening quite a bit, but they are there. And in any case, you know, we have to fight and assert those rights to keep them.
Agreed.
So that's you know that's the importance. And I think also in this instance, it's also about rejecting U.S. imperialism and saying, look, you can't
That's a
go
good point.
around bullying other world leaders because you don't like what they say or because they don't like the fact you're going to invade their neighbor or that you're murdering fishermen in the Caribbean. That is not how the world should work. That is not the world that I want to live in.
Agreed. And by the way, you had set precedent with this also, right? Like, meaning, if you win this case going forward, this could be an argument used against capricious putting people on lists. Like, I don't like what Jamal said, so he's now on a list. Well, this would indicate that, well, no, the president has to show some level of due process in the context of doing this. He can't just arbitrarily throw people on lists that he don't
Right.
necessarily like.
Yeah, no, we have to fight that. We have to fight that because I think you're going to see more and more of this. And again, not just of against foreign persons, but against citizens too.
American.
We saw this, for example, in Canada. Remember the trucker strike during COVID with bank accounts were frozen there without due process. I
Yep.
think a lot of those, if not all, were reversed ultimately. But I mean, you can destroy someone's life if you freeze their account for any period of time. If you can't pay your rent or your mortgage, I mean, we can't allow this. You have all those instances in which police just take people's property and money, right? If they apprehend you and you have money in your car or whatever, it's
Why
just
do you have a
crazy
thousand?
stuff. So,
Yeah.
anyway, so that's why I think it's an important case. But is it difficult? Sure. I mean, we're fighting against it, an administration that really doesn't care about the rule of law at all. It doesn't even pretend to.
Yeah. No, my questions aren't, they aren't criticisms. They're just for me to understand the context of the case and the case that's being brought and how you're fighting this case. It is obviously a worthy case that needs to be fought. I mean, because if a precedent is set where the president is not a king, he can't just, I don't like Bob, so I'm putting Bob on the list. Well, if Bob has the ability to say, well, what is the due process for you putting me on this list? Which Bob should be able to do, by the way. Like
Right.
Bob should be able to say, okay, well, if you're destroying my life, you need to be able to show something to give some kind of reason or rationale for you destroying my life. It can't just be arbitrary. If you can do it arbitrary, you can do it to anybody. And so, I think it's a legitimate, fair fight that needs to take place. And it's not necessarily a fair fight, but it's a fight that damn sure needs to take place. Agreed. When they are murdering fishermen and those type of things, can those people also bring cases against the U.S. government?
Yes, and I've been talking to Petro's administration about that too. So we're looking into that as well. There's actually something called the Foreign Tort Claims Act, which allows you to sue the U.S. government, for serious abuses like these, like killing, murdering people, and trying to get compensation. And I think that's a very viable case here.
So that would also go through, what court would that go through? Would that go through just a basic court? Is there a special court?
You first is start that by sending a demand letter and outlining your case to the government, and allow that you giving them a chance to negotiate some sort of settlement. And if that doesn't work, then you go into court, federal district court.
And then the judge in that particular case will listen to it, and there would have to be a determination. Is there an initial determination of whether the case is legit, or does
Yes,
it?
they might file a motion to dismiss, and that's when you argue whether you've alleged enough to even get into court. But then if you pass that, which I think we would, then you go to discovery, and we're
Oh, that'd be
entitled to
interesting.
information about, well, what evidence did you have against these people? But honestly, even if they did have evidence, there's no there's no law anywhere that says you can just murder people. If you think someone's a drug trafficker, they should be arrested, they should be tried and convicted. And even then, in the United States, there's no state, even states that have capital punishment, there's no state where drug trafficking is a capital crime.
Right.
It would not warrant death, right? There's no justification for what the president is doing in this regard. None. I think it's a slam dunk case, to be honest.
Well, he's murdered. Apparently, they've killed, what, 3 or 4 other boats, murdering the
Over
people that
50
are.
people now. No, it's many boats now. I mean, it's over 50 people.
No, I just meant like 4 boats recently, like over
Oh,
the course
yeah.
of the last couple of days.
Yeah.
And so they murdered over 50 people. This is all on Trump's word. meaning no evidence, no information has been presented short of, well, we think they're drug smugglers. Intel, apparently, I think this was Dropsite News, pointed out that intelligence officials have pointed out that these boats couldn't even make it to the United States if they
Right.
wanted
They would
to.
need to refuel 20 times. Rand Paul
Right.
said that. No,
Which
this is
makes no
yeah,
sense.
it makes no, this is murder. Pure and simple, murdering innocent people for political gain, I guess. That's why it's being done. It's just crazy. I mean, again, it needs to stop, and I think that's a slam dunk case. I really do. I don't see how he can defend that.
Well, more interesting though, in this case, oddly enough, would bring a case like this and potentially even winning a case like this slow down this idea of pushing to overthrow Maduro. Like, meaning if you drag the U.S. government into court, and in the context of the case, let's say getting past discovery, I mean getting to the point of discovery, and the U.S. government has to somehow disclose what they have at their disposal to show that these people were guilty of anything, and the U.S. government has bupkis or very little. Let's say they say, well, 3 of the 50 people we murdered were drug smugglers. Okay, well, that looks pretty bad in this notion of saying that Maduro is sending drugs to the United States, and the entire reason for the military buildup is because of that. Wouldn't this be an angle to try to deal with this military buildup against Venezuela, Colombia, etc.?
Yeah, it would help. It would certainly be one, form of struggle against that, right? Because yeah, if it's not true that these people are drug smugglers, then maybe it's not true that Venezuela is part of the drug trade in a significant way,
Exactly.
right? I mean, yeah, of course. No, I think that's why it's very important. But again, it's important just to defend the sanctity of life. I mean, this is outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Can you imagine if China were doing this or Russia? I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah. I think that guy's a drug smuggler, so I'm going to murder that guy. And it's like, well, wait a
Right.
minute. The boat can't even get to the United States. Yeah, yeah. Trust me, I'm Trump. That's what it
Yeah.
is,
And
right?
no one trusts
Trust me,
him
I'm Trump.
anyway. That's the other thing. Like, why would you believe him? I mean, it's just really incredible. And what's really incredible is that there's very little outcry about it.
That is the part that blows my mind. Like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, right? We spend $10 trillion to overthrow the government of Iraq and Afghanistan, in the way that we did this. Everybody knows it's a lie. Everybody. It's not even like, even people who fought in it at this point know it's a lie. And then Trump immediately, with the thinnest of veils, said Maduro is a drug kingpin. Now, mind you, we put in a drug kingpin in Honduras when we took Zelaya out and we put in Hernandez. Hernandez was a literal drug kingpin. He was a narco president. And they got him saying stuff like, I want to put cocaine into the nose of every gringo. In which case, they eventually arrested him and put him into New York. They extradited him to New York. So we put in drug kingpins. Venezuela is not a drug kingpin.
No.
Colombia is not a drug kingpin. Um, why do you think that the outcry has been so muted? And do you think this outcry will be muted for us trying to overthrow any random government? That this is just, we're an anesthetized population where we just don't care.
It seems so. I mean, first of all, the media seems utterly obsequious to power. Even though they will criticize Trump on various issues, when it comes to foreign policy, the media, including the New York Times, that claims to be such an upstanding institution, all this,
I'm
they
sorry,
tend to
Danny, to
go,
interrupt you. Not just including, especially the New York
especially the
Times.
New
I'm
York
sorry.
Times, they go along with the foreign policy aims of the United States, no matter who's in power. If the U.S. is vilifying a leader in another country, they amplify that vilification.
Yeah.
So it's, and most people have bought it. I mean, frankly, this is, when you look at like Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, and Maduro, uh, those people are not vilified overnight. It has been years of drip, drip, drip propaganda against Maduro
Yeah.
and the other leaders I mentioned who are now dead. Um, the population has been primed to hate Maduro. And just like they were Gaddafi and Hussein and Assad in Syria. And it makes it very easy then at some point to take them out because people believe they're monsters. So, and again, that would be impossible if the media didn't play along with that. And they do.
Agreed. Daniel, I'm going to let you go because, as you pointed out, I saw your text where you say you only
Oh,
give me
thank
30
you.
minutes.
Thank
I
you.
thank you for this, man. Great breakdown. Again, you have my congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
hope you kick ass in this case.
Thank you.
You be safe. Have a
I
good one, man.
appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
Kathmandu, man. All right. Take care.
Oh, I would try. I would
All
try.
right.
Have a good one. Dan Kovalik, he is a American human rights, labor rights lawyer, political activist. He previously taught international human rights at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. I'm fascinated by that case. And because think of it, imagine this. Imagine this. Not saying this is going to happen, but imagine this. Several Colombians were murdered in those boats that Donald Trump blew up. Gustavo Petro says, all right, I am having a legal case on behalf of those people and those families. I will back those families in this legal case. Dan brings up a team, goes to court, or sends a message to the government saying, we are suing you for this. The government tells him to F off because the government doesn't accept that they could be sued in this. He takes it to court. They get initially past the first round of them saying they want a dismissal. For whatever particular reason, they want the dismissal. And what they argue is effectively these men were fishermen. Full stop. There was no drug connection with them at all. And the US military just murdered them. And we are suing for damages for that murder. They get to discovery. Now, it may not even make it to discovery because the US government may just say, we'll pay them off. The moment that you get to discovery, though, what happens? The US government has to somehow show what they had on those people to say that they were drug kingpins, that they were delivering drugs. Now, if you have them out there in boats with fishing rods, and the US government is saying, well, we think they were sending cocaine to the United States. Now, again, that is not a death penalty case in and of itself. There's that. Two, if you indeed believe that these people are selling drugs and you're watching the boat and watching the boat to the point where you can blow up the boat, then you can apprehend that boat also. You have all sorts of military hardware out there. You can follow it with a drone as it is moving to the US and apprehend the boat. So you don't have to murder the people that's in the boat. You're choosing for murder. But you've already murdered them, right? How does the US government prove that these people are drug mules and drug sellers and carrying important drugs? How do you do that? How do you do that? And if indeed they're able to win that case where they're able to show, especially after discovery, that they had nothing in order to back this up, and the court kind of makes this point of saying, look, you're just out there murdering people. What the hell are you doing? Yes, we're going to award this family a certain amount of money. What happens if many of the families associated even with Venezuela do the exact same thing? I mean, they have their day in court also like anybody else. Then what? How do you create a legit argument and justification, which is what the Trump administration is doing? The reason why I think this is a fascinating idea is because what Trump is using is a thin veneer of making the argument that, hey, we are going through a regime change war because Maduro is a narco president and is sending fentanyl or cocaine into the United States. That's what he's doing. And that gives us a casus belli to overthrow the government of Venezuela and to murder whoever's out in the waters in the Caribbean. That's our argument. That's the Trump's case. That is the basic thinly veiled nonsense, the bullshit that he is spewing in order to justify murder. And the American public, honestly, like the German public during the Nazi government, says, okay, we'll accept whatever nonsense you give us. We don't like Maduro. We have our wives, we have our jobs, we have our Xbox, we have our movies. Superman is out in theaters. We have other things to do. So we don't like Maduro. You said he was a bad guy. And so if indeed you have some kind of reason to go after him, regardless of how thinly veiled that reason is, despite the fact that the government is shut down, despite the fact the military is not being paid, we're okay with you doing it. What happens when that gets blown away in court? Meaning, it's not that the military component of it gets blown away. It's the justification of the military component that gets blown away in court. Now, I understand that the case that Dan Kovalik is running against Gustavo Petro is different. But you've been randomly murdering families. That's pretty astonishing. And if indeed there's a premise in U.S. law that allows those families to go to court to get some kind of penance, some small pittance of compensation for the fact, for your crimes and atrocities, they should do it. They should do it, A, because what the U.S. government was doing is just grotesque. But B, it also exposes the U.S. government for the lying sack of shit that it is, a group of psychopaths that is willing to murder a lot of people for this kind of geopolitical expansion in regards to South